When I finally managed to write something with a less personal, more sophisticated conceit, I received an email from the editor, the first real feedback I'd had in months. It said, "What happened to the funny wife?" And that is how I came to be splashing my marriage all over the papers. I never really had time to sit down and consider the ethical implications, if any. I know other people see writing about one's family as a pursuit full of interesting moral pitfalls, but I lacked the luxury of that perspective. In fact, a full 6 months elapsed before I actually realized what I was trying to achieve with my new column. I was trying to make my wife laugh. She is almost the only person who reads what I write in front of me, and I have come to think of her as the planet's main arbiter of what is and isn't funny. Even as I was struggling to produce less personal, more abstract columns, I was noticing that she wasn't laughing at them. She read the Neanderthal one in complete silence in bed one Saturday morning, and then sighed and said, "I miss John Ronson." But she was reliably amused by any column in which she featured, often laughing out loud while reading back her own words. "I'm funny," she would say, cackling. "You just write it down." It is, of course, a delicate balancing act, requiring tact, sound judgment, and a good deal of empathy, which is why I have on several occasions got it badly wrong. "I don't like it when it says 'my wife' in the headline," said my wife one Saturday in early 2008. She had never before objected to me referring to her only as "my wife," appreciating, I think, the half-hearted stab at preserving her anonymity. But spelled out in big letters, the term suddenly looked dismissive and belittling, especially in a headline like the one she was reading. "I don't like it when my wife hires people and then leaves their stewardship to me." It was an understandable objection, and one that required a tactful, carefully worded response. "I don't do the headline," I said. "They do the headline." Some months later, she told me I couldn't write about our eldest son referring to her as a self-esteem roller, but it didn't feel like a gem I could relinquish easily. I wrote about it anyway, including her objection in the piece, and decided to treat her stony silence as tacit approval. 6 months after that, my wife exclaimed, apropos of nothing, that she would divorce me if I ever wrote that I found her watching Dogborstal. It seemed like a bluff worth calling. One rainy day during our summer holiday in Cornwall, she looked up from the newspaper at me with very angry eyes. "You've gone too far," she said. I looked back blankly. By the time the paper comes out, I don't always remember what I've written. "What are you talking about?" I said. "You compared me to the canoe wife," she shouted. Then I remembered. We'd been bickering while watching something on the news about the canoe man, who had disappeared after rowing off in what was, I believe, technically a kayak, and his wife, who conspired with him to fake his death so they could start a new life in Panama. "I think you're misreading it," I said. When I looked at it again later, I could see where I might have inadvertently drawn some parallels between my wife and the canoe wife, but I still thought her interpretation required a pretty ungenerous assessment of my intent. She spent the rest of the afternoon ringing people who she knew would agree that I had gone too far. Under the circumstances, I did the only thing I could think of. I wrote about that too. More than a year went by before it happened again. This time my wife was furious. Properly furious. Because I'd written something she didn't like, in a column in which she barely appeared. Her explanation didn't make much sense to me. I won't risk attempting to reiterate it. But there was no mistaking her anger. I realized that it didn't matter that I didn't get it. That her reaction was reason enough to stop doing the column if she wanted me to. She didn't even have to give me a week's notice. I briefly thought about offering to quit until I weighed up the chances that she might, in her current mood, take me up on it. There were a couple of obvious solutions to the problem. I could have steered clear of writing about my marriage. Although my wife insisted she was not uncomfortable with the column itself, she just got occasionally pissed off with an infelicitous phrase she thought might get her into trouble at work. Although this only happened once, and neither of us saw it coming that time. I could, I suppose, show her the column beforehand to give her a chance to voice specific objections, but I don't like her seeing it ahead of time because then she might not laugh the next Saturday. It's meant to be a surprise.